Mackenzie. So today our story is about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Now our last few stories have been about Warad and his two kids, but today's story is different. So today's story happened 1,000 years after Warad and his sons lived. This is much later in time, okay? And in this story, we're going to pretend that me and you are characters in the story, okay? So the characters are going to talk to us, which is pretty cool, okay? So before we start, I just want to remind you that this is Babylon, a city in Mesopotamia. That's what we're talking about. So Mesopotamia is all in here, and Babylon is one city right here. This is the Euphrates River. This is the Tigris River. Okay, and those two rivers help make it easy to grow food all in here. Okay? Let's get started with today's story. You may remember that Babylon stood on the banks or the edge of the Euphrates River and was the home of King Hammurabi. He had written a set of laws called the Code of Hammurabi. Well, many years after Hammurabi ruled Babylon, there was another famous king in Babylon with another long name. This king was King Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? That could be a long, hard name to say, but everyone in Babylon learned it because he was their king. Now here we find a whole group of travelers. All of these travelers together make up something called a caravan. They are headed into Babylon. So let's pretend that you and I are traveling to Babylon with this caravan. We have been traveling for weeks to get here so that we can sell fine cotton cloth, which is now all rolled up on the backs of our donkeys. Most of us are hoping to sell things in Babylon and then buy new things to trade back home. There are guides and guards that lead us through the desert to protect us from bandits or people who steal along the way. Some of the travelers actually come from Babylon, including a merchant. A merchant is somebody who sells stuff. A merchant named Uli, with whom we have become friends. Uli has been away from home for months, and he is glad to be getting home to Babylon. As we approach the high walls of the city, you tell him, "I have seen lots of cities with walls, but I have never seen a wall as big as this one." "Yes," Uli tells us proudly. "It is about 16,000 cubits long, so it can go all the way around Babylon. The wall is so strong and wide that soldiers have room to turn their chariots and horses around the top." A chariot is like like a horse and buggy. A chariot is the end that the people stand in. But wait a few minutes and you will see one of the loveliest sights along that wall. A few minutes later, up ahead, we glimpse a tall, wide gate in the wall. Bluish glazed bricks cover the gate, glittering in the bright sunlight. "That is the famous Ishtar Gate," Uli tells us. "Our king had it built, then named it for one of Babylon's goddesses." Half an hour later, soldiers at the Ishtar Gate allow our group to enter, and we find ourselves walking on streets made of stone. This feels strange after weeks of having spent walking on the shifting sands of the desert. Large statues stand every so often on the sides of the street. Look, the statues are made of gold. As we continue on our way, we pass marvelous palaces and busy shops filled with things to buy. Tomorrow we will take our cloth to one of the shop owners who has promised to buy it. Our friend Oli has invited us to dinner in his home tonight. Thomas, you need to wait 1 minute. You are lucky, he says. The windows of the inn where you will be staying look out upon the most amazing sight in all of Babylon. Do you mean the famous gardens? I ask. Yes, Oli replies. Then looking around carefully to make sure that no one else can hear, he says quietly, King Nebuchadnezzar can be very cruel and mean if he does not like you. But he also has a good side for those of us he likes or loves. And the person he loves most of all is the queen. The queen came from a land of hills and mountains with green meadows, rich with tall trees and colorful flowers. Some say that after she moved here, the queen missed her home. So our king decided to build her a mountain covered with green plants, the famous hanging gardens, so the queen would not be so homesick. But now I must leave you, for this is my street. Remember, you are dining with us this evening. Come hungry, for there will be plenty to eat. And smiling again, Ali leaves us to continue towards our inn. We have gone only a block more when you glance over the rooftops and stop in your tracks. Look, you exclaim, your eyes opening wide in wonder. When I look up, I have the same reaction. There, rising above the roofs of the city, we see the famous man-made hill. Many stories high, it is a series of level platforms, built one on top of another, and connected by ramps and stairways. Narrowing in size, the higher you look, the platforms are almost completely covered with trees, vines, and blooming flowers. So each of these kind of steps is called a platform. Okay? It's almost like a walkway. So you walk across this one, walk up the steps, walk across this one, walk up the steps, walk across this one, walk up the steps, walk across this one, walk up the steps. Okay? There are so many flowers that they hang over the sides and give the place its name. We stand amazed at this sight. How on earth can King Nebuchadnezzar grow all these plants in the middle of a hot, dry Babylon? That night, when we are all at dinner, Ali explains, the flat parts of the garden are made with mud bricks, covered in lead so that the water does not leak through. Workers had to carry up tons of dirt to cover those parts, and then they set all of the plants in place. The water for the plants is lifted up in buckets and attached to a long chain. The chain runs around the edges of two great wheels, one at the bottom of the building and one at the top. Workers turn these wheels with cranks, and the buckets dip into a pond of water at the bottom that is filled from the river nearby. As the wheels keep turning, the buckets become full and are lifted up to the top of the chain, where they empty their contents into another pond. From this pond, channels direct the water down the different garden levels and out among its paths. Oh, that's a lot of information, huh, Mackenzie? So he was telling us how they water all of these gardens, because these gardens are all so high up. So to water the garden, there's a bucket and the water down here, and it's attached to a chain. And they pull the chain, and it wraps around the wheel, and it pulls the bucket up. And then it dumps the water out here. And then it flows down into canals. And the canals water all in here. Oh, wrong picture. That night when we were at dinner, Ali explains, oh, I just read all of that. I tell Ali and his family I'm amazed at how smart all of this is, and how rich King Nebuchadnezzar must be. Does the queen like it? Ali just smiles and says, wouldn't you? What do you think, Mackenzie? Would you like it? Would you like it if someone planted all of these gardens for you? I would like it. All right, I'll see you in a bit.